We are live.
Okay.
And I do have 2 o'clock. So, Miss Lydia,
We're live.
we're live. All right, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our Tuesday, November the 17th. Hard to believe the year is nearly up. City Council Strategic Planning Meeting. Now call this meeting to order. So first up on our agenda this afternoon is a disparity study update. And for that, we're going to bring in Mr. Tony Salmons and anyone else that he would like to bring. So Miss Lydia, would you bring in Mr. Salmons, please?
Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, Mr. Salmons.
Good afternoon. How's everyone today?
I'm doing well. You got a little update for us?
We do. I'm joined with a couple of my colleagues, Ms. Karen McReynolds of our Office of Multicultural Affairs and Ms. Vicki Haley, who serves as our interim director for our purchasing department. And what we'd like to do.
I don't see Vicki Haley yet. Miss Lydia, are you bringing Vicki in? There she comes. Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Great. We do appreciate the ask of both Councilman Gilbert and Councilman Byrd and wanting to find out where we are since we received the disparity study. And what we'd like to do, we have a short presentation that we'd like to share with you. Just giving you some tidbits of, again, reiterating points that were identified from the disparity study. The disparity study did show where we had several deficiencies in our procurement area. And again, for those who may not remember, the study was focused primarily on the procurement of the city. And with the data that was received, we were also provided some recommendations from our partners at Griffin and Strong. And what our team has been trying to do is look at that holistically and see how we could take bits and pieces that we could recategorize, meaning look at those things that may be low-hanging fruit, those things that we could compartmentalize into low, mid, and long-range strategic goals for us. So in the time in which we started having additional discussions, it was perfect timing for us. We engaged in partnering with our partners from GARE. And with the training that we were being able to receive from them, one of the products that came out of that was we were subdivided in teams and to come up with a project that we wanted to try to address that we might be able to implement within the city government. And we chose, or it was chosen for our group, that we would address procurement. And it was right in line with having the data that was received from our disparity study. So we were able to dive a little deeper into what the recommendations hold and what we could possibly do in regards to what I mentioned to you just a few minutes ago. So as we go forward, Karen is going to present to us how we developed our plans. And this is rolling up into what we're hoping to develop an equity, our equity action plan that we would love to have council to review and adopt. Because what we're hoping to achieve by engaging in our low-hanging fruit and all the other strategic plans that we have identified in addressing those recommendations from Griffin and Strong is to allow ourselves in making these changes where they're not just a one-time and done activity. We're looking to develop strategic plans that will allow them to be woven into what we do on a daily basis, and even beyond our terms in serving in our various capacities here at the city, that will be the fabric of how the city works, that we're doing a greater and better job of reaching out to our vendors and suppliers and making it we're reaching out to them in such a way that we are making it a level playing field as much as possible for them to do business with the city. So at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Karen.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Tony, for that. And do I have the ability to share my screen or, okay, thank you. Okay, can you all see this?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you so much for that intro, Tony. And I'm really excited to share this work with you all today. I want to go through this draft of an implementation plan. And as Tony said, really weaving this into the fabric of everything that we do in and around the vendors and procurement work. So let's talk about the team. This is the team, and you can see for the width and the breadth of it that went across several different departments. All of us came together to really present our joint knowledge and just be creative around what we could do in vendors and procurement as it related to our equity work and to the results of the disparity study. So all of this is a culmination of that. So what's the desired result here? Here we wanted a place where all of Chattanooga's businesses to grow and thrive. One way to do that is by buying goods and services equitably and inclusively from businesses in the public and the private sector. So that's our desired result. The other question was, who's being left out? And this is where we use our equity tools, our lenses to look at our policies. And we found from our disparity study that according to the results that we have, 10.78% of the total awards were given to minority and women-owned business enterprises. That was found to be statistically a significant underutilization of minority and female-owned businesses and firms. So I wanted to highlight the areas that were looked at were divided into 5 categories. And these categories were divided into construction, architecture, engineering, professional services, and other services and goods. So I just wanted you to know where that came from. So the next section that we needed to look at is the outreach, to those who are left out. We had to listen to our constituents and find out who were being most affected by what we're doing here in the city. And so we did a lot of work in and around this, hosting vendor fairs at YFD centers, making our work more accessible. We've even done, as Tony mentioned, the virtual fairs. We really kind of changed the way we did business. We did surveys. We also have the results of our Minority Business Task Force report from 2017, along with the disparity study from 2019. So that being said, the question that we have to ask today, so we know, now that we know what we're working with, what do we do with it? What's the plan? And so as Tony mentioned, we talked about short-term strategies, mid-term strategies, and long-term strategies. And that simply means for us, what can we do with the resources that we already have? So looking at this, I wanted to just briefly go over these. And as Tony mentioned, we can, you guys can ask questions at the end for this, but we wanted to pull out some short-term strategies that we knew that we can do within the bounds of city government now. One of those would be the formal MWOBE initiative, legislation, if you would. And so we know already per our state that we can't give preference to businesses based on their racial makeup, but we can certainly recognize those businesses and what categories that they fall into and help based on the results of our disparity study. So when you see MWOBE, That simply means minority and women-owned business enterprises. We currently call that DBE, disadvantaged business enterprises. And so as a group, we wanted to go after a more strength-based, proven description of our businesses and make it as inclusive as we possibly can. So you're talking about minority-owned businesses, women-owned businesses. We have our disabled-owned businesses, and also our service-disabled businesses, as well as our veteran-owned businesses and our LGBTQ businesses. So that is what we would propose, that we could rename our supplier diversity program, just to make it more strength-based and more inclusive. We would also like to enhance our existing reciprocal certification process. We do already have an existing process that OMA does through our office, but we want to make sure that we can enhance that process where we can help people to again get third-party certifications to enhance their access to social capital, which helps them to get on a financial setting that they can be certified. And we also take them through what we call doing business with the city, so they can be certified internally with us. So we want to enhance that that program. Well, not a program, because programs come and go. Let me call this an initiative. We really want to enhance this so that we can really be supportive to our businesses coming into the city. We also want to enhance our coordinated vendor outreach. And this language is directly from the disparity study. What does that mean? Coordinated events that we can walk suppliers through the registration process, ongoing assistance to register their services, products and goods in our supplier portal, so that we can help them really bear down on what they do have to offer to the city. The next group is what we call our midterm strategies. And these strategies would, of course, take 6 months to a year. And that would be in the areas of contract forecasting. And this is in our purchasing department, where we can separately identify blanket contracts expiring in 6 months and publish it on the city's website. Also hosting events to let the MWOBE businesses know about upcoming opportunities. And we can expound a little bit on this when we get to the question and answer section as well. We also want to look into this prompt payment policy ordinance for prime contractors. And what we could do here is include some prompt payment language in some of our construction bids and documents. Include this language to stress the importance of prompt payment in pre-construction meetings so that our subcontractors can get paid in a timely manner. We don't have a lot of teeth in this area, but we want to at least put that language there and begin to work with our primes around the importance of paying our subcontractors on time, being that they are small businesses. The third component of this midterm strategy has to do with our data recommendations. And I'm really excited in the move that we can make here to maintain some of our look at our data recommendations, look at what we're already doing, and look at how we can enhance what we're doing. So the first section of this talks about maintaining our bidder data for all procurement projects. So these are basically talking about our bidder data, and that we would maintain this in our new Oracle system that's coming up, that these bid tabs are available and are awarded through an open records feel, if you would, so that it can be accessed by our smaller businesses. We also want to explore more seamless integration of external registry and internal supplier lists for better tracking of our MWOBE spending. And basically, that means we want to track what we spend with our minority business owners. So we need to look at how we can use our new system for that. And what's exciting about it, and I'm trying to remember, yes, okay, this is right. What's exciting about this is that our existing registry now, the way that it's used and is configured, there will not need to be any integration at this time, because now the two systems come together. Where before we would have to think about the integration, now it's already in the works and we don't even have to do it now. So that was something that was not present when Griffin and Strong did our disparity study, and it is present now. So I wanted to make sure I didn't miss that. Next, we have our registration system that would allow for input of certifications and verifications to be put into our internal system. And that's our certification program. Say like if a business came in and they already were certified through the state, that they could download their documents into our system, and really that we can automate the way we do certification. That sits in OMA right now, and we do a lot of the things by hand. We, even though we have our application on the web, this would help us to streamline it and make it a digital application. So again, really in the time of COVID, making this accessible to people to be able to go in and do this. So this is something we feel like we can really do midterm. The next two are our minority flag and Oracle. This should be based on verified and accepted certification. And that ties into number 3. And what that is that we do our due diligence to make sure that the businesses we certify are 51% minority owned, not just owned by somebody saying that they're a minority business, but that we can verify that through different ways. And then the last point is the external registry for vendors to identify a single primary commodity code and a limited number of secondary codes. So we'll work with suppliers as they choose their commodity codes that they want to be notified of quotes and bids in the new system as they come in. So again, this is something that we can work with fairly in short order for our smaller businesses. So let's look at our long-term goals, and I'm just about done. These are the long-term strategies. These strategies are in our disparity study. They are quite spelled out in there, but we certainly wanted to look at these and give you an idea of where we think we can go with these particular strategies. So contract debundling. This is a longer term goal that needs to become part of our future capital budgets. This would require us to develop project specification to explore ways to debundle contract into smaller project scopes so that our smaller businesses can take on some of those smaller contracts, or parts of the contracts, let me say it in that way. The next one is the subcontractor utilization tracking. And currently the city does not track subcontractor utilization in any form. We don't do this. However, there has been a new demonstration of an add-on, and Vicki can expound a little bit more on this than I could, but there has been an add-on to the new Oracle system to be able to track some of this. We're going to be working to look at how we can do this, but before we can set contracting goals, we have to set a way to be able to track it. It's like having a cart before the horse. You have to be able to have a means by which to track what we're spending. So these 3 are the longer term goals. You'll see under subcontracting goals that it was actually the recommendation in the disparity study to phase this in over a 3-year development period, right? So so we can really look into developing a robust race and gender and ethnically based subcontractor initiative. So this is going to take some work. So you've seen 9 of the 13 recommendations. These are the 9 that we think that we can do at this time. Let me tell you about the 4 that are remaining. These 4 remaining strategies will take some effort in probably in the area of budgeting. That means it's going to cost us some money to do. The second area is going to cost us some collaboration within and outside of government in the private sector, and that we're going to have to bring in some more external partners to do the remaining 4 goals. So we wanted you all to see these. And again, these are in the disparity study. The first is, of course, in our staffing resources. Speaking of hiring a chief diversity officer, which while we've been doing our GEAR work, really sets better if we call it an equity officer, right? So it's the work of diversity, not just being a diversity officer. So that again is a position. Also a contract compliance officer in a contract administrative position. Again, so this falls into those 3 areas I mentioned earlier. We also have our staff training, where we would do specific training around our American Contract Compliance Association for our purchasing personnel and really throughout city government. It also talks about us doing mandatory racial equity training, and we have already undertaken GARE, which, as Tony described earlier, is taken off. We are already through our pilot programs and looking at our implementation programs. The last 2, which are our coordinated supportive services ecosystem, and that system really would look at the city as developing small businesses. Everything that a business would need to get off the ground to become a scalable business. So looking within city government, again, and partnering outside of city government to really drive and train tomorrow's workforce and entrepreneurs. So that's going to take a lot of time as well. And then our last recommendation, and that was remaining, is our negotiated economic development subcontractor goal or initiative here. So due to the disparities that were found in the disparity study, the city would need to explore initiatives or elements of such to encourage MWOBEs to participate outside of city projects. So this is really going into the private sector. There was also given an example in Chicago where they have an external private sector preference in and around MWOBEs landing these private sector contracts. So again, we're not quite there. I'm hopeful, but this is kind of where we landed in terms of looking at what we can do. But we certainly wanted to share with you the remaining strategies and let you digest that as you would for today. So with that being said, that is the last part of mine. And I'll exit this. And I will turn it over to Tony.
Thanks, Karen, for the presentation. Before we ask for questions, I wanted to give Vicki an opportunity to share if there was anything that we may have overlooked in presenting to council.
I don't think so. I mean, we've worked on this for, goodness, we started lining out the timeframes right after we had the disparity study. So no, you all did a great job covering it.
So council, at this time, if you have any questions, we'd be glad to provide you an answer or a response for them.
Councilman Ledford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure who to direct this to, but anybody's welcome to. When we go back to the first page, when we had the numbers of minority-owned businesses and population, I had a question back there, and it was, benchmark. What is the benchmark that we would consider ourselves moving in the right direction per this study? What is in my business, we have goals. We have a goal that we say, if we get this goal, or we even get close to this goal, we're going to measure that successful. What is our benchmark? I've got a couple of other follow-up questions. What is our benchmark to get to that? What number are we looking for we would not put that slide up?
Well, Tony, if you would, if I can take that question. And Councilman Ledford, I went back to the slide and I'm looking at it now. So I think this came out of the disparity study that we only used basically 10.7% of our total awards were given to minority and women-owned businesses. When I first came into this position, 16% was where we were aiming for in terms of our spend. And to be quite honest, once we look at where we are, so this basically says from 2014 to 2018, this is where we landed, because those are the dates that the study looked at. 16%, while it is a larger number than that, if we're looking around the country in terms of things that have been done, like in Atlanta, in Detroit, even in Memphis, and some of those surrounding areas, I think we should, as a region, probably look at that and see where we think we should land based on the public and the private sector. And the racial makeup of Chattanooga. We have 22% of our businesses are minority owned, but our minority make up about 38% of our population. So at least getting as close as we can to the makeup of our population. While that's still not great, while 38% is still not great, it would at least be equitable based on our population.
So 16%.
That was the initial benchmark. And then you asked me, where
let me
should
go back.
we?
Where, if we never have a number that's concrete, if we never have that finish line where we think we have done everything that we can do, I mean, you're comparing us to Atlanta and Detroit, and I'm having a hard time digesting that, because I don't see where Chicago, Atlanta, or Detroit. But I'm trying to figure out, is the number not clear? Do we have a number that we feel like we have done our job, and that the disparity study has done our job? I'm trying to figure out what that number is, and I'm not getting that number yet. I heard 16. I heard 16%.
Let me clearly answer it. 16% is what was given in our office as our goal.
16%. Okay.
16%. What I added around the other information that I shared with you, that's only looking at what other regions are doing. But if you're asking us from the basis of looking at being equitable and inclusive, it should at least match the makeup of Chattanooga and what our businesses are, right? So we have 38% of the minorities that make up our population. At the least, we should have, if we look at those businesses, and 22% of our businesses are minority owned, then at least we should get up to 22%, if not 38%, because that's what's represented in our area, according to our census.
And
And to give a
yeah.
little more context to that,
I'm
Councilman.
sorry. I'm not tracking it. I'm sorry. I apologize.
Okay, I'm sorry I'm not explaining that correctly, but
38%. We want 38% of the 38% is what we want doing business with the city.
no, sir. What I'm saying is, look at the area. We would have to look at our area, right? We would have to look at the number of businesses that we have that we think are viable, that can do business with the city.
Okay.
Right? Build that up. And if you have a population where we have 22% of our businesses are minority owned businesses, but we're only doing 10.78% of business with minority businesses, that's already below the number of businesses that we have represented that could potentially do business with the city.
Councilman, let me jump in here just a minute. We do have one other hand up, and we do have 2 more presentations for us this afternoon.
Yeah. Okay.
If you don't mind.
Thank you, sir.
Councilman Gilbert.
Just going back to the 51% that they said they can trace. If you can trace that, say 51%, and saying that the company saying that they have a company that is 51% minority, or they work with minority companies, and you can't trace it, what would be the outcome if they give you misinformation?
We can't certify them as a minority business. To be certified as a minority business, you have to be at least 51% owned by a minority.
Okay. And the other thing is the list. Can we provide most of the contracts that we have a list of, already have a list listed for minorities? Say it's concrete work, brick work. Here are the companies we have that you can choose from if you don't have any minority companies that you've been working with. Will we have that list available?
So there are 2 ways, and Vicki can chime in on this. We have our vendor registry where all of our businesses are registered. We can go in there and supply a list to anyone looking for minority businesses based on whatever discipline they're looking for. Then we have a certified, right now it's called DBE. We have a certified disadvantaged business list that's available on our purchasing site. That's searchable. It's in a PDF form. Those businesses are added. That list, is added to as we add our new certified businesses. So that is very well kept up, and that can be supplied to anybody. The problem often lies is that if somebody is looking for a particular minority business and we don't have anybody in that particular area. That's one of the things. If you're looking for plastics or, and as you know, we don't have a lot of contractors who are prime contractors. We have a lot of subcontractors that are minority business folks, but we don't have a lot of prime. But that list, to answer your question in short, that list is available and we can give them what we do have. And the city has the most extensive list in our area right now.
Will we give an incentive to the prime if they choose from the minority list?
We can't right now. We can't by law. We can't do that.
State law prevents that.
Even by points, not necessarily.
State law prevents any of that.
Okay, council, let me do this. We've been given a very thorough update, and that's what we had asked for, and I appreciate that. We do have a couple of other items on the list that we do need to cover before our 3:30 agenda. So let's go ahead and wrap this up. Mr. Salmons, thank you for the presentation. Very thorough update.
Thank you. I'd like to make council aware, if you have any questions related to this, just feel free to send them to me and we'll get a response to you as quickly as possible.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, Miss Lydia, you can excuse our guest. And at this time, the next 2 items on our agenda will be covered by Councilwoman Burrs, our quarterly performance update, as well as the role of city auditor. So Councilwoman Burrs, if you would go ahead and bring us the quarterly performance update as well as the city auditor.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think what we'll do, since the time has gotten a bit shorter, I've asked him to go ahead and make his report. Now, he's already sent you a copy of it. So let me ask first, are there any burning questions that you want particularly responded to? Because if not, he's going to give the overview, and then you can talk with him offline, or we can have a follow-up meeting. Same thing with Stan. I've asked Stan, both of these are our PowerPoints. I've asked Stan to give 20-minute report, then he will send it to you to answer questions offline. And if there's a need for a follow-up meeting, a public meeting, we can do that too. But since time is of the essence, let's go ahead with Tim. And Tim, looks like you've got no more than 20 minutes. Thank you. Would you bring him on, please?
This is Tim Moreland.
Yes.
Yes. He is on his way.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Hello, council members. Lydia, do I have ability to share my screen?
Yes, you do.
Wonderful. Well, I will go ahead and do so. And I will make sure we can get through in adequate time so there's to address other things. Thank you for opportunity to give you our first quarterly performance update. As Councilwoman Burr said, love to answer any more in-depth questions, offline, but I can give you kind of a high-level overview, and then and leave a little bit of time for answers. But I can get through this, I think, pretty quickly. So just a reminder: typically our data program is more of a data as a compass, not as a grade. So we are always looking at the data and interrogating what we could do better, what we're seeing in the data, why we think it's happening, and what we're going to do about it. So it's data used for action and for improvement, not so much to just say good or bad. So it's really about taking the data and doing something with it in a meaningful way. Don't forget your dashboards. So you have your council dashboards. The link I sent you to this presentation has a link to your dashboard, so you can log in at that link below, or you can click on this image here. And then just to orient you on how to get into it, we created a short 3 or 4 minute video that you can review yourself. It will walk you through how to log in, all the way to how to access your dashboard and to dive deeper into your individual council district dashboard. So while you're in there exploring and perusing, if you have any questions or things you'd like to see that aren't there, hit us up at performance@chattanooga.gov and with suggestions or improvements, and we'll do our best to get those in there so you can have a fuller picture of what's going on in your community and using this tool. Again, we always love creating tools, but we really get really excited about when people want to engage with them and use them. And then one other thing before we get into performance, I think an important data story to tell you about is our Chatanalytics project. So this is where we're shifting from looking back at data to see what happened and looking forward to use data to be predictive and to proactive in our work. So we have a couple Chatanalytics projects that we're finishing up that we're very excited about. Again, it's just the Chatanalytics is, we gotta brand everything with a Chata or a Nuga type thing, right? So that's why it's Chatanalytics. But it's really just a way to proactively use data in the tools of data science to think about how we're going to solve these real world problems. So a couple of things we looked at. One is fire inspections. We have a great fire inspection team in the fire department. They are very busy with new construction and the state mandated things they have to inspect anyway. So it doesn't leave a lot of extra time for going into other places. And so the challenge was, how do we prioritize fire inspections for commercial buildings with the highest fire risk? So how do they know what's the place that's most likely to have a fire? Can we predict that? And then can they go in there and be preemptive in their inspections? So what we did is we created a model that looks at past fires and actually be able to create a fire risk score of kind of what we think a predictive score of what's likely to be there. And then we create a simple dashboard where they can filter by the risk score or the year of construction or the planning district, the fire inspection district, to find out what buildings are they going to add to their roster of inspections for the month to be proactive as opposed to reactive. And so that's something they're testing out now. So we should have some, hopefully by the next quarterly report, we'll have some good stories about how that's going. Just kind of anecdotally, they were skimming the list, and it was very edifying to have the fire inspector say, yeah, these were, if I was just going to name some projects, some buildings and some locations, it would have been these ones that you've listed from the model. So the model seems to be matching the lived experience of the fire inspectors and their expertise as well, which is very helpful. Other issue is, how do we identify and fix the city's most dangerous intersections? And we're going to maybe extend this to not just intersections, but corridors itself. So right now, when we have a problem in an intersection, there's a complex formula that looks at crashes, volume, severity, and severity rates at the state level, and kind of creates that all to create a composite score for in particular intersection. But it requires a whole lot of data and information, and kind of it's a one-off thing. And so the question was, can we actually do this for every single intersection in the city so that we can have a full picture of what the accident rate and the severity rate is at every single intersection? And so we developed this model for intersections, and actually we're going to be working to expand that so we can actually do links of roads and then corridor analysis, not just intersections. And that will let us, that will highlight those areas that we could focus on to do kind of wholesale corridor redesigns or re-signalizations or even enforcement. And then, so again, this is kind of using data proactively as opposed to reactively, and coming up with where we might want to invest our safety improvements and where we want to do those things. So those are two really exciting projects that we're looking at. And we're going to be finishing up these projects in the next couple of months and testing them out. They're in pilot phase right now. And then we're going to be opening up a new cohort in the coming new year. So there should be even more Chatalytics projects coming into the new year in the new calendar year. So let's talk about fiscal year departmental performance. It's been tough. COVID has hit us. We're seeing, I think, a 10% decrease in our performance overall, from 54 to 34 to 43% overall performance. And we're definitely seeing it in a lot of the measures and the things we were trying to achieve this year. It's made it more difficult, especially for some agencies like our White Youth and Family Development Program. This is what this shows you is on target versus off target compared to overall number of targets. So that's, so you can see Public Works has the most performance measures and some of the least, like in purchasing or in DIT. But it tells you not only the number of measures, but how many of those are on or off target. And if you want to kind of compare that as an 100% scale, so what percentage of each department's measures are on or off target, that's what this one's showing you. So again, you can see the YFD was hit pretty hard. Also, our HR measures were hit very hard too with the hiring freeze due to COVID, and that kind of really messed up our outliers and meeting some of our metrics there as well. But we can go into that if you want to a little bit more deeply. So we talked about the COVID impacts. We continue to see them. Departments are still trying to be resilient and pivoting and providing service as best they can. And if that continues to happen, we continue to look at the data to see where we can make improvements and where we are seeing problems that need to be addressed. So that's something that we're doing monthly through our Performance 101 meetings. One thing that you suggested that we've added this go round is kind of a arrow indicating the trend over the last quarter. So over the last 3 months, what is the trend we're seeing? So do things seem to be increasing? So is that is the trend looking good? So if it's looking good, it's a arrow going up. So meaning like this is the trend we want to see. And this, for the example, building permits, you know, is we had a target of 22 days. So an up arrow means we're actually meeting that in the last 3 months, or actually better than that. And that trend seems to be going down. Steady means we're staying right at kind of the average of where we think the trend should be. Kind of it's not increasing or decreasing, right? So it's just the trend is steady. And deteriorating means it's going the wrong direction that we would think. So on each of these departments, you're going to see an arrow associated with it, seeing like the trend is is it looking good? Is it looking steady, or is it deteriorating? And what we've been seeing. And this is we're going to continue these trend arrows quarter by quarter. So for the next quarter, it will be the trend for the 6 months, and then the 9 months, and then the last quarter of the 12 months to see what the trend was overall throughout the time. So what that looks like is listed here. You can see like number of pedestrians, even though we're not on target currently for our ped counts, the trend overall for the last 3 months has been increasing, meaning more and more counts coming into the pedestrian count stations. And that's typically kind of how you're going to read these things. So target means we're not meeting the target, but the trend means there's still a positive trend that we're seeing so far. So we have I have about 5 more minutes, and there's lots of departments. I think what I might do is just pause here to see if there's any departmental specific questions or agency related questions at the end of this report. Sorry, I'm just getting down here. You can click on these PDFs. And so we're providing both the data on how they performed, and then also a narrative text as well. So you can also see not how they performed, but also any kind of quarterly narrative text updates that the agencies are providing. Those kind of helps give context to the performance that you're reading in the previous PDF. So those are those two. So I'm gonna just pause real quick so I can answer any kind of overarching departmental questions or agency questions that you've kind of read in the data, or kind of broader issues you think you'd like us to be looking at and discussing and presenting.
Councilwoman Burrs.
I think that I've been over this report, and it's fabulous, Tim. You've done a really good job. What we can do, if there are a lot of questions and people want to do deep dives, we can schedule a follow-up meeting, Mr. Chair, if you wish. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Moreland before we go on to our audit? I'm seeing no hands at this time. All right. Mr. Moreland, thank you very much. And I think we all have the slide presentation emailed to us.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much for your time. And I just want to give a shout out to my team who were instrumental in putting this together. I have a best team in the city. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Lydia, you can excuse our guest, and Councilwoman Burrs, I think you're up again, ma'am.
Yes, sir. Before Stan starts his report, I do want to tell you that we have our capital projects quarterly report coming up. And what we're going to do is send that out to you as well. And then I will be asking later if anybody wants a follow-up meeting. Just wanted to get that on record because time is of the essence.
Okay.
So let's move on to Stan's report. There have been a lot of questions about the city auditor and what that role is. And so we're giving you a report now. Stan is going to be giving you a report, going over it on the screen, then make notes. Then he's going to be sending it to you. And anything you have offline you want to answer, fine. And again, Mr. Chair, if you want to schedule a public follow-up meeting, we can do that as well. Thank you very much. Stan?
Okay, hopefully everyone can hear me, and screen is being shared.
Yep, we can hear you, sir.
Wonderful, wonderful. So I very much appreciate this allocation of your time. I know it's very limited, and I will move through this presentation rather quickly. But as Councilwoman Burr said, I'll email you guys the slide deck And I'm always available to any of you guys. Just call, email at any time. This slide deck is a little bit old school, but I think the bullet point nature of it will really help in terms of being a reference point if you want to access it after this review. So many years ago, the City Council formed an audit committee, and they later refined that committee to establish a comprehensive independent audit function in the city's charter. So, you know, the original audit committee members, the current audit committee members, that committee is comprised of 5 certified public accountants. So they're very knowledgeable in the world of audit and in what we do. The following slides will guide us through a general overview of what the charter amendment provides, and also some context as to why it has those provisions. So the charter provides this comprehensive audit function with oversight by an independent audit committee. So that committee oversees the external audit, internal audit, the city's fraud, waste, and abuse hotline. And the committee is staffed by the Office of Internal Audit. And they're all volunteers. These are all volunteer certified public accountants that serve on the audit committee. And reporting you will typically see is going to come from internal audit or the external auditors. The external auditors, that's typically going to be once a year with the opinion they issue on the combined annual financial report. And then you'll see reports from the Office of Internal Audit. It's pretty rare that council will receive or see reports directly from the audit committee, because we are staffing that, but you will see that every once in a while. And when you see that, that's typically going to be an area that the audit committee feels it's a material issue that hasn't been properly addressed. That's generally going to be, they see something repetitively being reported by our office, or even sometimes the external auditors as they're meeting with them. So the following slides here, they're going to touch on these key elements. And you'll note all these are excerpts and comments from authoritative sources that are not me. So the things you see in this red or orange color here are coming from typically the Government Accountability Office or the International Institute of Internal Audit. It's very respected, long-standing organizations is where these quotes and comments that you will see. And the city's charter does a very good job of addressing all these key elements. So organizational independence, fundamentally, a lot of the other key elements relate to ensuring that the audit organization can function without influence or pressure from the organization being audited. And primarily this is management or administration. So the city's charter has substantial provisions to ensure this independence. And some of the other key elements I mentioned that we're going to look at substantially serve to provide for this independence. So the city's charter provides a formal mandate. It's providing for an independent audit committee and protections for the audit function on the whole. And I have some quotes listed here from the International Institute of Internal Auditors. But if you really understand the purpose of the audit function, it's really just kind of common sense. So if you expect transparent and objective reporting, you can't allow the function that's being reviewed to have control or the ability to exercise influence over the reviewers. And so sufficient funding, this is just, budget cuts and funding restrictions can be one of the most fundamental methods that management might use to exercise influence or control over the audit function. And so the city's charter actually provides protections to address this fundamental standard. And this doesn't mean the budget for audit can't be cut. When it's necessary, it can. It just needs to be proportional to, the cuts that are needed in general, across the board for general operations. It's particularly important that the audit function is protected from disproportionate cuts that could be made at the discretion of management or administration. So we're actually dealing with an issue currently related to interference, but I think we're going to have worked through that relatively soon. But unrestricted access. You can't audit effectively if you don't have access to records and people. So that's mandated in the charter. Office of Internal Audit has access to all the records and staff in the city. And it's been really rare that we experience any attempts to restrict our access. Typically, management has always worked pretty well with us on that. They understand it. Ultimately, the ability of the audit function to operate with objectivity, it depends on that ability to operate with independence. So if you want objectivity, you must have independence. Primarily, this is about limiting management's ability to interfere with the internal operations and the funding of the audit function. It's pretty fundamental. Competent staff, we have had, we have now, and we will always strive to have competent staff. This is very important that the audit function maintains integrity. That means we have to do good work. And you might not like what we have to say or what we say, but it's very important that you be confident that what we put out there is accurate. As we'll note here in a couple of slides further along, we follow professional auditing standards that assist us in doing quality work as well. If there's only one thing really that you all remember or take from this presentation along these lines, I want you to know that anytime, at any point that any of you have any concerns or issues about the accuracy of something we're reporting, contact me and we'll be happy to review the supporting documentation for the findings that we have. That integrity is very important, and it's important that you be confident that what we say can be counted on. And so we always want to stand behind that and be available to provide you with that if you have concerns. And we work really hard to provide accurate and objective reports. Right now, currently we have 4 professional staff. It's me and 3 other auditors. With that staff, we have over 50 years of experience auditing at the city of Chattanooga. And overall, the current staff, we have 107 years of audit, investigative, and compliance experience. So we really do have a competent staff in the office. Stakeholder support, that's why we're here right now. This session is a really good thing because it is important to keep key stakeholders informed. And as the governing body, the council is probably the most important stakeholder for the independent audit function. If you think about it, the CEO or the mayor can get anything they want immediately. Here in the city, the mayor has over 2,000 employees that are pretty much available at their demand to provide information. They can get a briefing, they can get documentation, whatever they want. But the council is often at the mercy of administration with regard to the level of information they can obtain or the completeness of answers that they might get. And so the Office of Internal Audit will always work to provide council with information on any legitimate request that we receive. And that means pretty much anything that the council asks for or a council member asks for. The only limitation would be if we're asked to pursue something that's just clearly a politically motivated witch hunt, or that's just clearly inactionable that we can't take action on. And the professional auditing standards, the Yellow Book standards, provide a very substantial and comprehensive framework for ensuring quality audit work is done. And what's very important is they provide a measure or a set of criteria for evaluation when we're audited. So, we get peer reviewed, and that's where the auditors come in and audit the auditors. And I do want to just barely off tangent here while we're talking about standards. One key thing that I want to point out is those standards that we're required by law to follow. They require that we report deficiencies. When we're doing an audit and we find deficiencies, if we find contract violations, code violations, grant violations, we are required to report those things. And if it's in an audit, it has to go to council. It has to be posted to our website. So, and the reason I point that out is because one of the things I think that's very important for people to understand is that it's not personal, but it's not our discretion. The law requires us to follow these standards. These standards require it. And what we do is a negative reporting model. I mean, that's just the way that auditing is structured. It's a negative reporting model. We have requirements we have to follow. And a lot of times I think people take it personally, and it's just not personal. It's just doing our job, and we're doing it following the standards we're required to follow. I mentioned just a little while ago the peer review. That's where the auditors get audited. This review is conducted by an independent team of experienced local government auditors. Typically, they're not even from the state of Tennessee, and we've always passed our peer review. Longevity. So if you think about it, in particular in the city and in a lot of different governments and local governments, you know, there's virtually a complete turnover in key positions in the city every 4 to 8 years. We have a new mayor. They appoint a lot of new department heads. Oftentimes there's a reorganization of departments. You know, we used to have Parks and Rec. Now we have Parks under Public Works, and we had Recreation moved under the new YFD division. So we have new department heads. Those department heads typically want to appoint their own deputy administrators or directors that are reporting to them. They'll even appoint their own administrative assistants. And so you see a lot of turnover, a lot of organizational knowledge is lost just by the very nature of the way the city is structured with the turnover that we have in the mayor position in particular every 4 to 8 years. And so the Office of Internal Audit houses a substantial amount of organizational knowledge. You know, where I mentioned a few slides back about the experience that our office has over time just working in the city of Chattanooga and reviewing different areas. And so there's a knowledge base there. No authority over operations. This is another very important thing to understand, is that this is specifically provided for in the charter. You know, we can't discipline staff, we can't terminate staff, we can't issue executive orders or policies, we can't pass ordinances or resolutions. We can only make recommendations. That's all we can do. And then it's up to the individuals vested with the authority to take action on the matters that we bring to light. As I'll touch on in my final slide, you know, this has an impact on who we send our reports to as well. So council's focus on accountability. You know, at the beginning of this presentation, which wasn't long ago, I hope I've moved through rather quickly as time demands. We started with a list of best practices, and we kind of were looking at why council set the wheels in motion to create an independent audit function. And so if you just look on this slide, you know, we have the state law, which requires each municipal government shall establish and maintain internal controls, which shall provide reasonable assurance that, you know, we're in compliance with applicable laws. Our funds, property, and assets are safeguarded against waste, loss, unauthorized use, and misappropriation, and that we have systems in place for capturing transactions and information to ensure that we have accurate and reliable financial and statistical reports in order to maintain accountability over assets. So the city council is the city's governing body, and the city's independent audit function was created by the city council to assist with fulfilling their fiduciary responsibility. So we here in internal audit, we're here to serve, you know, we're here to provide information that will help in the decision-making process. And also keep in mind that administration is also a stakeholder. You know, so we try to get the information to those that can take the corrective action. We have a strong mayor form of government in Chattanooga. You know, we have administrators over each department. So administration is often where our reports need to go. Ultimately, too, you know, we want a good working relationship with management at all levels. So, you know, our goal is not to embarrass them by issuing public reports anytime we find a deficiency. You know, our audit reports are required to go to the council and be posted on the website. So sometimes we just have to, but we do also will take those issues sometimes that we're reporting to management that you all might not be seeing. And, you know, if we're seeing repetitive problems or something's not being addressed, you know, we will often bump that up and include the council or advise the council of that. I think we had a recent memo about, you know, an issue we were seeing just repetitively every time we had a need to look in employee personnel files, that there was documentation that the files just weren't complete. And so we raised that to the level where we copied the council on that recently. And so although the council doesn't see all we do, it is important that you all have a good understanding of the things we're doing that maybe you don't see. So So when I send out this slide deck here, as soon as we're done, I'm going to also send you guys just a few, like maybe 2 or 3 memos of things we've issued in the last month that will just give you an idea of the other things we're doing out here that you don't see. I don't expect you to read through those thoroughly, but I would appreciate it if you at least take just a little bit of time and just look at them and get an idea of the other things that we're doing out here on a regular basis. And I also would like you to know that things that we don't necessarily put out, on paper or in PDFs. We serve as an informal resource for a lot of city staff. We get a lot of calls from people. Tends to be more lower to middle level management and line staff, but they call us about issues about compliance. Are they in compliance, or a process, a way to address something? And I think a lot of times just those employees that do understand the way internal audit is set up and the independence, they tend to put some trust in what guidance we may give them, where they might just be a little concerned that about biases that may be there if they go to their management, or even HR. And so, all of these activities serve to help the city operate more effectively. And with that, I will close my presentation and I will yield to the chair. And I'll try to close my presentation as well. Here we go.
Okay. All right. Do we have any follow-up questions for Mr. Sewell?
I have one, sir. It's
Councilwoman.
it's for Phil. Phil, I was looking at the last slide and I was looking at the idea of our fiduciary responsibility.
Yes, ma'am.
When we get reports that might be problematic, is it incumbent upon us to do anything further? Very often we get the reports and just kind of stare. Is there anything under fiduciary that is our responsibility? We're derelict if we don't take it further.
Well, the responsibility for issues of employees falls to the executive branch of our government based upon our charter. And that is an issue for the mayor when it's dealing with an issue of employees and what employees are supposed to be doing in connection with their jobs. I think that is based upon the provisions of Title 8 of the Charter regarding the executive powers, and the mayor has the responsibility for all of those portions of how employees are doing. If it's an issue of the budgeting aspect and the financial aspects of the government and how funds are being used, I clearly think that falls to the governing body, which is the council in this case, to deal with, because those are items that you deal with on the budget. But we have 3 different prongs of our city government that are established in our charter that are involved here. And Stan may be providing information to each branch in that regard. Some of that is informational and some of it is something you can do something about it, and others it might fall to another branch of government.
I was speaking more about policy implementation, since we create policy.
Any policies you can consider, what Stan has talked with you about in a specific report as a method of how policies might be implemented or changed as you go forward. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Councilman Gilbert.
Yes, Stan, how you doing?
I'm doing well, sir. How are you?
Doing well. If a department not getting audited, but has questions to have a department that's function better, best practice, do you have something that they can actually look at to see what's best practice in the department so that they can go towards that?
So that's an interesting question. It's a very broad question. If I can narrow it down a bit, when we do an audit, we really do dig down deep. The presumption we have is that the folks in the different departments, they're the pros in their area. You have people there that have been doing it for a long time, whatever it is they do, but when we do an audit, we take a deep dive. We talk with them, with the key people, to get an understanding that helps educate us. But then we go look at other cities. We might look at other, white papers. And so we try to determine what are the best practices and the best way to do things. And a lot of times they're doing things very well here at the city. We've got some great people at the city and spread out in the city in different departments. And sometimes we find things that we identify from looking at other cities or white papers and studies that we say, hey, we can do this better, and we point that out. But I think in the way you generally ask the question, we don't just have a repository where anyone from any department can call up and say, hey, Stan, email me over all the best practices for public works or for recreation centers. Typically, when we're getting into that, we do a deep dive. Even if it's not an audit, if we're looking at something very particular, we try to look for any bit of information we can to educate ourselves very well, to become very knowledgeable in that particular area at that particular time. So I hope I answered your question. And I think the answer is really probably we don't just have a repository where we can just email out all the best practices for one particular department at any given time.
Well, the reason I asked that, this person is no longer with the city. It's been years ago, but their concern was they was afraid to ask questions because they didn't want to get audited to the point of making them look bad as a department director. But they did want to correct their department and make it more functional. So I was hoping that we can do that, because a lot of people want to know what's the best practice for my department. How can I put things in line without looking like I'm not a good director?
Yeah, I think, sir, that actually I mentioned that back in one of the slides, or here just at the end of my presentation. We really do. The reason that we don't just copy the council on every report we do or post them to the web is we want management to come to us and we want them to say, hey, could you guys help us out here? We know we got some problems. And you're right. A lot of them are really worried about doing that because they don't want us putting out a negative report. And so we really do our best. If someone comes to us and asks us to help, we try to limit the reporting on that to them. If we go get, if somebody files a hotline, we find a problem and a deficiency somewhere that we go identify, we're typically going to copy, the mayor, the chief operating officer, or, Daisy. But if someone comes to us and asks for help, we do our very best to keep it low key. And I think the problem might be that we need to possibly do a better job of making sure they all widespread understand that. But we do try to make sure they understand that that's our goal.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right, we've got two hands up and we are approaching the quarter after hour. Councilman Ledford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be about 40 minutes. But
Okay.
Stan, thanks for coming on today.
You'll be by yourself, but go ahead.
I'm used to it, Chairman. Stan, when you talked earlier about access to information, you made a good point where the mayor and administration have access, complete access at any time, can get answers to questions relatively quick, within minutes probably, if they really wanted to. Does council have that same capability? And if not, is your office helpful in getting information? And I'll back this up with an example. There's been a time or two where I've asked for specifics on information and been told, no, we're not going to share that with you because of whatever definition that was applied at the time. And I needed that information. I needed that information to help me make an educated decision on how to vote. And my question is, if we run into that, any of us, is your office helpful in that matter, or are we just out there on our own as we feel sometimes?
Okay, yeah, I think in most instances we could probably be helpful. I would hope that information you need to make decisions as a governing body, your quickest access would be from administration, from management administration. They can probably get you the information the fastest. For us, we have unfettered access, but it's still a process. We don't have direct access a lot of time to all the systems, so it can take a little time if we're doing it. But if you've got a legitimate request for information, you need to do your job and make decisions. If you ask us, we'll go dig and find that and report it to you.
Okay, so a lot of times this obviously comes up with a lot of situations I've seen over the past few years where time is not our friend, Stan. It never is when we need the information to help make a decision. So, and that may mean whether we vote yes, whether we vote no on something. And, you know, and I guess that's just the game that's played sometimes. But anyways, thank you for your presentation. I'll follow up with some offline questions, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Coonrod.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Stan, for the presentation. Just a couple of questions. If we could, I would like for the council to really take a deeper dive into what this charter amendment stated back in 2012, what you all approved, because we approved for Stan, the current auditor. Pretty much he has a lifetime appointment. The only way that he could be removed is if the CPAs or the people on the board with a 2/3 vote say, we want to get rid of Stan for whatever reason that it is. And he's the only city person that's, you know, in a position like that. Like, how does that happen? Is that something that we really want to happen? Not taken away from Stan at all and the type person that he is, but I just think we may need to look at that and, you know, really decide, like, do we want that to be an elected position every 4 years, every 8 years? We could put a time frame on it, but right now, Stan is just in this job forever. And then secondly, it also says here in the establishment that you report to the audit committee, the mayor, the council, and the citizens. How are we engaging the citizens in any process for the auditor? And like, are we on Facebook, Twitter? I mean, are we sending out newsletters? How are we getting the information to our citizens?
Okay, so yeah, with regard to the citizens, you know, all the audit reports, all the post-audit reviews are posted online on the city's website. You know, we post other things there too. We do an annual financial analysis. The community survey is posted online, so we make it accessible. The direct reporting, obviously, we can't do to all the citizens of Chattanooga, but we do make sure that, you know, we try to, that's what I talked about, is we try to do our best to direct the reporting to where something can be done to address an issue. And, you know, on a broad base, something like the community survey, I think, serves very well to the community, where they can kind of see how everyone as a community feels like things are going. And they have access to all the audit reports online as well. With regard to the issue of longevity, I mean, it's just a best practice, and I can be removed. And if I'm doing a poor job, I should be removed. And I can promise you, I have 5 certified public accountants who oversee me. And if they come to you all with a recommendation to terminate me, I'm sure you will affirm it. And if I'm doing a poor job, they will know it. I'm probably in the most in the city. If you look at all positions, I don't think anyone else has anyone looking over them and what they do that are quite as knowledgeable about what they do as what I have. I have 5 certified public accountants that are very experienced individuals who can identify if I'm doing a poor job, and they would definitely, if they felt I was, they would come to you as a council and say, hey, we recommend removing him, and then it just takes 5 of you guys to do it. And so if I'm issuing bad reports, if I'm issuing things that are erroneous, that are false, that are inaccurate, I need to be removed. I should be. And I'm sure that audit committee would take action to do that. They're a very respected group of individuals.
Thank you for that, Stan. And then one last thing is that we often talk about diversity and inclusion. And I looked around and I saw on your board, it's really not diverse. So how can we get people who don't look like you to serve as a part on the board? I mean, I'm sure we have CPAs that are Black, Latino. I mean, you know, how can we make that department more diverse?
I promise you, Councilwoman, it has been something that I very clearly have put forth my thoughts to the bodies that appoint the audit committee. We do have requirements about being CPA, and it does make it difficult. It adds a lot of integrity to the body that they're certified public accountants, but it does make it tough. I mean, we really limit the pool of people, and I'm not saying that that's I mean, you might even say it's a sad state, but you know, you can go to the local Tennessee Society of CPA meetings, And there are a lot of people who look like me, and I understand that. And we have we in my office even, I mean, it's been an issue that we have that I feel like I really need to make sure I've at least got a female in here with I've got there are me and 4 auditors typically budgeted for, and right now I've got Lisa as the only female in the office. We don't have a minority in here, but we deal with what we have that comes in on our applications. And we have, when we've had these things open in the past, we work with HR. We try to push it out everywhere we can. I promise you that we look to find as broad a pool to pull from as we can. And we are kind of at the mercy of the independent appointing bodies, that they really have a limited pool from which that they can appoint from as well.
Dan, let's wrap this up. We've got about 10 minutes left. There's some other things that we need to handle before we go to our 3:30 meeting. Thanks so much for coming on and exploring this with us. I'm sure the council will have the slide presentation. And if they have any further questions, they can get with you offline.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, Miss Lydia, you can excuse our guest.
Yes, sir.
All right, going on to other business, some pending presentations. I think at our December 1 strategic planning, we're going to be having the bid discussion. Councilman Oglesby, I believe that you are handling that. Is that correct, sir?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'll handle that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Madam Clerk, would you put Councilman Oglesby's name next to that?
Yes.
Please?
Yes, we will.
Okay. All right. And then council goals and objectives, 12-1. Councilwoman Burrs, is that falling with you, ma'am?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Madam Clerk, if you would put Councilwoman Burrs with that. Our GARE racial equity training will be on 12/8. Madam Clerk, has everyone gotten with you to confirm their availability?
Yes.
Okay, and that will begin at 10:30. Is that correct?
Yes.
Still, okay. All right, panhandling ordinance review. We have legislative committee by that, but is that something, Councilwoman, that we need to have in legislative committee, or how do you want to handle that?
Mr. Chair, we sent out the panhandling ordinance for everyone to review. I'm not sure. I think we probably have everything we need already. It may be a matter of how we want to enforce it, but I had it sent out early for everybody to take a look at to see if they needed or if they thought we needed to take it back to legislative. I've reviewed it and it looks good to me, but I'm just one person. So since there's been so much energy about that, I'd appreciate input. And if so, then it should go to the legislative committee, which would be Councilman Smith.
Okay, do you want to wait to see what kind of input we get on that, or before we actually schedule a date?
Yeah, I'd appreciate if somebody would let me know something, because there's been a lot of discussion about it in the various districts, and we're trying to do something to fix it, but we got to make sure the law is right. So yeah, if you guys had let me know.
Okay, let's address that again, maybe at our 12-1 meeting, strategic planning, and see at that time if we're ready to schedule it for committee.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, Councilman Ledford, City Code, National Disaster Relief.
Mr. Chairman, on November 3rd, Nicole sent out the changes that Phil had made in section 21-136 regarding overgrowth. Phil, back me up here.
Yes.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but we added basically language under paragraph C that just says any citation for violation of the overgrowth ordinance shall not be issued during a declared emergency by the mayor. for that time of the emergency. That's all we really needed to do to provide relief to citizens who are undergoing extreme hardships during that time. And I think that it's given what we've seen, and it needed to be corrected, or needed that pressure valve of relief. And I think if everybody has seen that, I'm ready to put it on the agenda. I don't think we need to take it much further, really.
Okay, everybody review that, and let Councilman Ledford know if you have any questions or concerns about that. One other thing that we do need to discuss real quickly before we break, well, not going to be much of a break, our December recess. Typically, we recess for 2 weeks, the end of December. Those dates would be the 22nd and the 29th. Anybody have any objections to being on recess those 2 dates?
No, sir.
Okay, very well. Madam Clerk, if you will notice or make notice, the 22nd and 29th, the council will be on recess of December.
Yes, I'll do that.
Okay. All right, we do need to close out this meeting so the vice chair can restart our 3:30 meeting. And I think he has some other obligations that he may need to get to as well. So we're going to go ahead and close this meeting out so that he can restart the meeting so that we can get started at 3:30. See everybody.